the very first pasuk of Parshas Emor, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe, Emor el HaKohanim b'nei Aharon. God tells Moshe to speak to the Kohanim, the children of Aharon. V'yamarta aleihem, and you should tell them, lenefesh lo yitama be'amav, that you cannot become tameh, impure, by coming in contact with a dead person in our nation. And you'll notice in this pasuk that the word Emor is repeated. Emor el HaKohanim v'yamarta aleihem. Speak to the Kohanim and tell them. And of course, the Chazal are bothered by this redundancy. And also, I think, are bothered by the usage of the Kohanim b'nei Aharon. We know that the Kohanim are the b'nei Aharon. And Chazal say that this alludes to a very important halacha, which is, Rashi cites, lahazhir gedolim al haktanim, to obligate the adults to speak to the children. And there's a dual message: speak to the Kohanim, and they should speak to their children, the Bnei Aharon, and include them in this prohibition. Which means that even a child of a Kohen, even a young child of a Kohen, even an infant Kohen should not become tameh to a dead body. And the mitzvah of maintaining the sanctity and the purity of the Kohen includes not only himself, but all of his children. Moreover, the halacha tells us that this is not something specific to this law, but this is true about all Jewish laws, that we cannot bring a sin onto a young child. We cannot feed non-kosher food to even an infant, because we are lahazhir gedolim al katanim. And what I like to do is to focus on this particular instance, even though it's a paradigm for many Jewish laws, the fact that the Torah chose this case to teach us this law. And it's really peculiar because really, we really try to preserve the tahara of all children. It's very unusual for young children to become tameh, to come in contact with death. And I think that this might shed light on this mitzvah in general. And that is to say that we generally shield children from too much encounter with tragedy or with death, because we want to preserve their innocence, their optimism in that everything is going to be okay. And too much encounter with death can undermine that idea. And I think it's the same exact thing with a Kohen in general. A Kohen also cannot become tameh, because a Kohen is a person who needs to have a strong reserve of optimism and of a bit of innocent optimism that all will be okay. A Kohen is a person who shepherds the Jew, often the Jew who sins and comes to the Beit HaMikdash to bring a korban to do tshuva. And the Kohen shepherds him through that process and tells him, there's always an opportunity for tshuva. You can always improve. You can always make sure that whatever failing you had, you won't do it next time. In contrast to a prophet who sometimes conveys the message that we're doomed, the Kohen always has the optimism and tries to impart that optimism and that innocence on the entire Jewish people. So in that sense, I think it's interesting and very purposeful that the Torah conveys that the Kohanim and the Bnei Aharon and the youth need to preserve that innocence and that optimism so that they could thrive in their roles that they're in at that given time. And when I think about this idea, I think that we're living in a time when many people were robbed of our optimism and our innocence. And we're accustomed to saying or telling ourselves and to telling others, everything's going to be fine. This is not a big deal. And it turns out that not everything is really going to be fine, and hopefully in the big picture it will be, but there has been a lot of suffering and a lot of tragedy that we've witnessed, more than we would ever expect or experience in the past. And in particular, it's the people on the front line, our healthcare workers, our doctors, our nurses, our paramedics, our ambulance drivers, and on, who have really encountered not only the risk to their own health, but seen so much death and so much tragedy and so much loneliness in difficult times that they've also been robbed of the innocence and optimism that they might have had. Where you want your doctor or nurse to tell you that everything's going to be just fine, and it's become very difficult to say that, and very difficult to say that after seeing so much difficulty and so much tragedy. And how do we cope with this? And how do we react to this reality? And I read something very interesting about Agatha Christie this week, who there's been a lot written about her this year. It's the 100th anniversary of the publication of her first book. And it's interesting that she volunteered or she worked as a nurse and dispensed medications during World War I and World War II, and worked for thousands of hours during the war. And I saw a picture of her in her Red Cross white nurse's outfit, and I looked at the picture and said, wow, she looks so pure and innocent and, in the white nurse's outfit. Then I thought about how much tragedy she probably witnessed through the world wars. And I thought about the innocence that she must have lost in that experience. And then I noticed, and I read that, first of all, she did write a couple of books before World War I, which were rejected by publisher after publisher. And after the war, she used a lot of the knowledge she learned about potions and medications and drugs in her mystery novels. And it struck me that in a way, she lost a little innocence, and then she used that in a constructive way and in a creative way throughout her lives, publishing so many best-selling books. And I think that although we try to shelter ourselves and youth from tragedy and from difficulty and from the tumah associated with death, there's also an amazing ability of the human spirit to be able to recontextualize it and integrate it and then grow from even the most difficult of situations. And the Torah goes on to say that even a Kohen becomes tameh sometimes. In the second pasuk of the parsha, ki im l'sheiro hakarov elav la'aviv limo la'aviv levano levito la'achiv ula'achoto, etc. That even a Kohen is not completely sheltered, and even children are not always completely sheltered. And we try to preserve this optimism, but also recognize that no one's fully sheltered, and we have the capacity and the potential to integrate the tragedies that we witness and to recontextualize them and hopefully make us stronger in the future, make us more sensitive and more strong and more able to help others in the future. And my hope is that that will be the experience of our entire community, and especially those who are on the front line who really can use the support of the community at this difficult time, as they might need people to talk to and to decompress with and to talk out the challenges of their experience. And we hope that they and we will all become much stronger and much more able to help each other in the future, despite the challenges of this difficult time. Good Shabbos.